I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, April the 22nd, brought to you in part by Y-Tex Tags. The important things is what really matters. And as we've been struggling through this pandemic crisis here, we've seen our markets fail, we've seen a lot of fear and uncertainty take over the industry. And it's not just our industry, guys. You look around at every other industry. The restaurant business, the oil business is terrible. Your farmers, it actually happened in a time that it hadn't hurt them bad too much yet, but they've been struggling all along. But just about every industry has been sapped due to this coronavirus deal. And I tell you what, it makes you think about the important things, and it's your health, the health of your family, trying to keep your business together, trying to keep your property together, for you cattle people trying to maintain your herd, but basically it all comes back to family. And some of you conspiracy theorists think that I've got an agenda with this report, and I don't know what it would be. I guess the agenda is support the auction method of selling livestock. Because I work for DV Auction, we're an auction broadcaster, so that's probably it. But as far as these feeder flash reports, the content is whatever I want it to be, and that's pretty much it. And if you guys will indulge me, I'm going to start off here, and I've got a lot of markets and stuff I'm going to give you after this. If you guys will indulge me, today marks 10 years since my father passed away. And I'll probably never get another chance to do this, so I'm gonna do a little tribute to him. I tell you what, my dad didn't grow up with a whole lot. Now his dad, my grandfather, built the sale barn in Clayton, New Mexico. You guys have probably heard me say that before, but he ended up selling that out to a partner and went through hard times. They leased ranches and worked, but Dad didn't have a whole lot of stuff left to him. I mean, basically nothing. He had married a little gal off of the Bebb Ranch there, and they didn't have a whole lot. They were kind of poor ranchers there in the sand, and they just started out and didn't really know what to do. So he bought a flatbed truck and he started hauling hay. He did that at night. He would put stock racks on it and haul a few livestock. His dream was to be able to trade livestock. That's what he wanted to do, and he didn't care what it was or anything livestock related of value. He finally worked his way up and got him a fancy sale barn trading rig, but he still had to haul hay sometimes, but it didn't seem too fancy there. But he finally got his legs under him and started trading more cattle. He went to 6 sales a week when I was a little kid. Every day but Sunday he went to a sale somewhere. And when you live in northeastern New Mexico, Clayton, New Mexico, it's a long ways to any sale barn, so it's a pretty good drive. And so anyway, he went through the trading deal. He got to the point where he was backgrounding several cattle. He started ordering cattle out of the southeast when that was unheard of in that part of the country. We had preconditioned lots there, nothing fancy, but always some cheap cattle there. His favorite thing to do was to put together a bunch and keep sorting on them until we could take several loads up to Denver Stock Show to the Bell Ringer special. And he loved to watch those Midwesterners up there think that we must have had 10,000 cows, the way we got that many heifer calves all to look just alike whenever we had just bought load and load and load of southeastern calves and kept sorting on them and selling off the ones that didn't match. But that's kind of what we did. He got to where he was buying a lot of cattle in the country. Back in the late 70s, the 80s, into the early 90s, nobody bought more strings of cattle in the country off the ranches there than George Wall did. His biggest claim to fame, one of the things he was most proud of, is the V4 Land and Cattle Company there in Logan, New Mexico, owned by Art and Benton Kane. He bought their calves for 25 years in a row, and they were well respected, and he was very, very proud of that. I remember he told me when he first started buying those calves, they would come in weighing in the 4s, and when he when the last year he bought them, I think they was weighing over 7. So they grew, and he grew. The times kind of passed him by. The video auctions came in, and he didn't change with the times. And then we actually had a sale barn for a while when I was in college there. And you see him on opening day there, and he kind of had a long-haired auctioneer. I don't know who that guy was, but looks like some kind of a punk. But he had an interesting life. He taught me a world of things about the cattle business and about life. No more than my mother, but he's been dead for 10 years and she's still with us, so I can still appreciate her. But he taught me about the auction business. He had a farm auction service with his good friend and partner Don Prather from Boise City, Oklahoma for many years. And I tell you what, I still think of things that make me think about him every day. And some of those things are, you make money when you buy them. Which is, he usually was talking about calves or background in cattle, but that kind of goes for anything. You make your money when you buy it. When you sell them, they all bring the same. So you've got to do your bargaining on the buy end. When you're straightening up cattle, if you think that calf needs a shot today, it probably needed one yesterday. And I think you guys can kind of relate to that for sure. He had a lot of other ones. He was a jokester, always having a lot of fun. One of his favorite sayings was, I'd rather have a daughter in the cat house than a son in anything but a Ford pickup. But I miss my dad. I know you guys that are lucky enough to still work next to your dad or enjoy them, and I know there's a lot of you in my shoes that lost them too early. But that's kind of the way this whole business goes. It's more about your family than anything else. Let's talk about what else is going on. Cattle on Feed report estimates came out, so we're going to have a cattle on feed report this Friday, and these estimates were wild. Your inventory numbers of on-feed cattle for April 1st, they pegged at 95.2. You think, man, that's pretty low for all the cattle we got in there. Look at the placements on here. They've got placements pegged at 80.7 for March placements. Now, we were about a week in before the Corona deal really took over, but they've got ranges on your placements from just under 55% of a year ago all the way to 86, and it'll be interesting to see where that lands. Of course, I mean, it did put the brakes on cattle moving as soon as we got deep into this Corona deal, but I mean, it's just shaking everything up. There could be a hole in cattle when you look down, 150 days from March there, because not many cattle going in, and maybe that will bring that market back around if we, of course, we've got to get out of this hole we're in right now. But marketing's 112.2. Well, that's all about Corona too, and the panic buying that went in. But your oil, we talked about it having a value less than nothing on your Tuesday visit. Well, it closed Tuesday at $11 a barrel for June. Of course, the May went off the board, which that was why it was so erratic and finished with a negative, is because it was settling there. But your June at just over $11 a barrel, I tell you what, that is nothing. And my gosh, you just think about all those people in that industry. But let's talk about your board on cattle. April live cattle futures down $1.92 at 91.60. June down 102 at 84.07, and we all thought that it might be higher because we figured some of your major packers would come in and give near steady money from last week to cattle once they started this week, and we're getting late in April. That thing's got to settle here before too long, and we've got such a huge basis there. We thought that the cattle would be higher. I do think they'll be higher here on Wednesday, and that'll be good for your Wednesday sales. But your out fronts on your live cattle contracts down 82 cents to down $1.60, so not quite as bad as your close buys. But April feeder cattle down 42 cents at 117.90. May was down 52 cents at 116.75. You go out front on your feeder cattle, it was from down 82 cents to the last one quoted way out there in 2021, up 37 cents. But your fat cattle trade, and what is the reason that packers come out and start bidding on cattle on a Tuesday? Because they need cattle. And evidently they needed some cattle, and you think, whoa, they've got cattle they haven't picked up that they've bought 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yes, but they needed some cattle close by, and I did talk to some guys that knew of cattle that sold late last week that have already been delivered and harvested. And why they can't get around to pick all these other cattle up, I don't know why. And but you hear about them wanting extra days on some of these cattle that they purchased negotiated or on the Fed Cattle Exchange. And you also hear that they're not picking up about 25% of their formula cattle that they've contractually obligated themselves to pick up. Now, the way that should happen, if they don't pick those cattle up when they're supposed to, they should beg the feed yard for an empty pen. Kind of like your feed yards have to beg for a kill slot. They should get down on their knees and beg with tears in their eyes for an empty pen to feed those cattle that they should have already picked them up. They should pay double yardage for those cattle and inflated feed costs and put those cattle back on as a custom feeder there, and then they can watch those cattle get as big as hippopotamuses, and then they can stand the heavies on those cattle. But they don't. They just say, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to pick those up. Sorry about that. I'm going to need a few extra days here and there. That's not the way they should do it, but they've always got the hammer on the cattle, man, and it's getting so old. But you look at what traded early in the day on Tuesday, and you say, why would they trade on Tuesday? Because they needed some cattle. A few of your regionals and then your majors come in there bidding 94, 95 live on some cattle, and a few dressed cattle at 149 and 150. But then we saw a major come in, and by the name of Cargill, they're trying to keep their shirt clean as much as they can, and they came in late in the day and bought some cattle, or late in the morning actually, but bought some cattle at 105. Well, that was steady with the previous 2 weeks, but the regionals, which don't have the heat on them so much, and then some of your bigger packers that aren't too worried about their reputation or keeping their customers happy, they were lowballing early in the morning, and then we did see Cargill come out and buy some cattle at 105. About 3,300 in Iowa and about 8,600 in Nebraska confirmed. They may not trade any more cattle than that up north. Of course, Kansas and Texas haven't traded anything yet. We may wait for this week's Fed Cattle Exchange to establish the price on that again. But I would say, with the way the box beef cutout values launched on Tuesday, when they get ready to buy some cattle in the Southern Plains, they'll probably come back with that 105, which has been the prevalent price over this coronavirus deal, which is plenty cheap enough. Box beef cutout values, your choice cuts, everything just launched, and your retailers are getting nervous because they see these packing plants having to slow up because of the corona deal, and a lot of your people that work in those packing plants have been getting sick. And if you've been reading some of the reports, it's not necessarily at work where they're getting sick. The same people hang out together when they're not at work, and they contract that stuff at parties and get-togethers and things when they're not at work. So that's as bad. So maybe they're better off going to work and they're too tired to party afterwards. But choice cuts up 11.47 on Tuesday afternoon at 259.85. Wow, boy, they're making the money. 248.82 up 10.83. You talk about gouging. We've got an investigation going how they were doing gouging just a couple of weeks ago, and now they're back gouging again. And we got a choice select spread at just over $11 and only 78 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings, because these retailers are sick of it. They're sick of getting gouged. They would rather go with a half-empty meat case that continue to get gouged by these packers, and that's why they're not buying that much product. Now, if they would back off of some of those levels there and take something close to steady, well, then they'd move some product. But the movement, I've told you guys, the volume on your boxed beef says everything. They can set those prices anywhere they want to. It's just whether or not they want to move some product. So what are cattle worth? I've showed you these figures here before, but we updated them here with this afternoon or Tuesday afternoon's cutout values. And you see, we take your prime choice select and your no rolls, and then multiply them times your nationwide percent grading average there, and then we come up with those levels. Take it down, and then take that times 63.5. Your cattle should be bringing, your live cattle on the hoof should be bringing 163.62 according to what your cutouts are. And you know, your gift from some of your packers that are trying to be good guys is 105. The other guys that are gouging on the other end, 94, 95, when cattle should be bringing 163.62, and you say, well, they've got to slaughter those cattle. They can't, you know, that's what they should cost, but they've got to slaughter. Well, let them keep the drop value. Look at the drop value over there is over $90 a head. You know, when you're killing 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 head a day, that's pretty good money, you know. And then there's other places you can add value, but they're getting to keep that. So we've been hearing that your packers are back up to $600 profit margins. If you take that 163.62 and you figure out by the head, and then you figure that 105 by the head there, and figure about a 1,350 to 1,400 pound carcass, you're looking, or a steer, you're looking at more like $800 a head. That's what they're making, guys. I hope somebody shows this report, and I hope there wasn't too much boring stuff at the start and too much misspeaking, that people can watch this and see how bad it is. And we're in the midst of it. We haven't got to the climax probably yet of this pandemic, and they're continuing to gouge. And evidently DOJ is not breathing down their neck near hard enough. But your slaughter is nothing. That's what's enabling them to keep doing this. 170,000 through Tuesday. That's 19,000 less than that minuscule week we had last week, and 54,000 head less than the same week a year ago. Your 30-14 movement, that's what we're trying to push here. So these packers would have to come in and buy at least minimum 30% of their cattle on negotiated cash basis. That would, and that's per facility, guys. There's some of these plants down here in the south that haven't hardly bought any cash cattle for years, and make them buy 30. That would bring things around, and it would launch the northern plains, guys. But we've had 2,750 about sign-ons since we've started this deal. We want you to continue to get on the sign-on letter and show your support with your ranch, your farm, your sale barn, your company, whatever, anybody that this deal is affecting. We want you to get on there. You can see that on uscattlemen.org, the U.S. Cattlemen's Association website. They've got it on there. You just click on it, you fill in a couple little empty cells there and submit it, and it goes. I think we're still carrying it on nationalbeefwire.com. But look at some of the latest ones we've had sign on. Riverton Livestock Auction, that's a winter barn there in Wyoming. Orchard View Farm and Cattle Company out of Virginia. 4D Cattle Company out of Utah. Thornton Ranch out of Texas. The Caldwell Livestock Commission Company there in Texas. Bruce Robertson Farms out of Tennessee. Presho Livestock Auction, that's a big premium sale up there in South Dakota. Presho Livestock. Roman Charlet Ranch is out of Oregon. The Lassiter Ranch is out of Oklahoma. The Dutton Ranch is out of North Dakota. I thought the Dutton Ranches were in Montana, but I'm glad to get some Yellowstone fame there. Roswell Livestock Auction, the Wooten family out of New Mexico. That tickles me to death to see them sign on to this. H.O. Ranch out of Nevada. The Voss Ranch out of Nebraska. The Deffenbaugh Ranch out of Montana. Drywood Ranch out of Kansas. Edwards Cattle Company from Kansas. And F6 Farms out of Iowa. All signed on here in the last couple of 3 days. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction. Late on Tuesday at 121.35. Kind of steady, just a penny better than Monday's close. So man, that makes you feel good anytime you see a steady on your cash anywhere, or you see your futures markets that don't go limit one way or the other. It feels just like a calming, and we really like to see more of that, but we need to start gaining again. But look at the best calf market we saw. La Junta, Colorado, winter livestock. And I have to give a shout out to my buddy John Campbell. If you're not watching the videos that he does for his market each week, they're fantastic. And I tell you what, he threw some support to me, and man, I'm just tickled to death to get it. We haven't been close really that long. I mean, we've met a couple of times. I've admired him from afar with his radio ads, with the way that he introduces his cattle, the way he runs that market up there in La Junta. I tell you what, he's got a daughter that's the best looking woman I've ever seen in real life. Other than that, I don't know John all that much, but we kind of mutually admire each other, and we got along the times we've been together. But I tell you what, he really threw me some support there, and he's got a big voice there working for Winter Livestock in La Junta. He sold calves sharply higher, the lighter stalker type calves. Look at this one lot that he sold, 40 head, 514 pound steers at $178.50. Wow. Atkinson Livestock Market, the old reliable there, and that's on the yellow brick road there. 52 head, 642 pound steers bring $159. These buyers are ready to go back to work buying cattle. Will they hedge? No way. They're going to add value to some of these cattle by turning them out. But I tell you what, that's the way they make a living, especially these farmer feeders and farmer backgrounders. That's the way they make a living. They don't know what else to do. They're coming in, they're buying some cattle, and I tell you what, the demand on these feeder cattle has kind of been excellent, albeit at lower levels, but some of these prices are getting up there pretty well respectful now. Denny Rezac Livestock Commission out of St. Mary's, Kansas. About 1,900 feeders there. I looked at the online Cattle Market Central automated market report there. Mostly higher. This is the only place you'll see this market reported. But look at these loads of loads of steers and bigger. Loads and strings of steers here that I pulled out of Rezac Livestock Commission. And the one stick out deal I see here is that load 60 head. That's a big load, 910 pounds at $116. But the top quote that I saw anywhere on Tuesday come out of Glacial Lakes Livestock out of Watertown, South Dakota. 72 head, 773 pound steers bring $136.75. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.